Hello, my name is Chris LaBelle, and I'm going to walk you through my dissertation proposal. The title of my dissertation is The Administration of Online Programs and Statewide Systems, a case study of the University System of New Hampshire. So for this study, I'll be looking at how online programs are administered. There has been a significant amount of research in that area. Very little of that research is focused on the context, particularly in scaled or systems in terms of how online programs are administered. As mentioned in my title, my proposed study will investigate or look at online programs at 4 institutions that are affiliated with the University System of New Hampshire. There are numerous reasons why institutions pursue online learning and then develop online programs. The research suggests that the primary reason most universities, especially 4-year institutions, pursue online learning is for revenue generation. Some of the more notable studies, Berg 2003, and then more recently Legan and Garrett in 2017. Certain conditions are required for online programs to be administered successfully. So there is a significant amount of research that examines the characteristics of successful online programs. Some of the more common areas that are looked at in those studies: capital investment, specialized staff, and appropriate infrastructure. The reason for the growth of online learning is well known. Allen and Seaman in 2015 point out that residential enrollment has been flat or decreasing over the last, this was mentioned in 2015, but that would have been over a 3-year period. And so the same trend holds to date. And so in higher education, there has been a period now of about 5 to 7 years where residential enrollment has been trending downward or has been flat. Even at the public institutions where about 3/4 of all post-secondary students are educated. So the trend is because there are more students in the public statewide systems, the trend is more pronounced and has really created some level of apprehension among administrators in those systems. And as pointed out by several researchers, really the only few studies that I found over the last 10 to 12 months that looked at online programs and sought to understand some of the nuances about the administration of those programs within statewide systems. So McGuire in 2007, who looked at how policy was implemented in a statewide system, and Vines in 1998, who looked at how online programs, the administration of online programs would be impacted by scale or size. So there really is very little research that focuses on how online programs should be administered in statewide systems, even though there is increased urgency for statewide system stakeholders to understand how best to administer those programs and grow those programs. With that in mind, the purpose of this study is to understand how institutions affiliated with the statewide university system administer their online programs. Because there have been so many studies that focus on the characteristics of failed or successful online programs, there are almost as many frameworks to help evaluate what constitutes success or failure as there are studies. So that does complicate the task of identifying an appropriate framework or model to evaluate online programs. And it also begs the question of what constitutes success or failure. And so within my study, I'll be looking at those terms, but more importantly, I've chosen to rely on a single framework proposed by Rovai in 2003 and then refined by Rovai and Downey in 2010. In addition, I'll be talking a little bit about an eighth factor, but Revai and Downey provide 7 factors. Factor 1, planning; 2, marketing and recruitment; 3, financial management; 4, quality assurance; 5, student retention; 6, faculty development; 7, online course design and pedagogy. So there is quite a bit of overlap with other studies in terms of these factors, but Revai and Downey rely on a systems approach that is focused on how to improve online programs and acknowledge that there is a place and a need to prioritize factors and to understand the interrelatedness of these factors as well. And so I found their framework to be more robust, more productive in terms of understanding success factors and outcomes. And to a large extent, their model resembled a logic model, which is, for the most part, a tool that is familiar to those who look at program assessment and have to understand a multitude of factors that influence outcomes. Because there have been so many prior studies focusing on online learning and online programs and the administration of online programs, what is really unique about the study that I'm conducting is that it's the context. It's the fact that I'm looking at the factors that influence the administration of online programs in a statewide system, or really in a scaled or large system. And so to help capture that dynamic in the framework I'm using, I'm including an eighth factor called the subsidiary principle. King, in 2013, he was, I believe, the chancellor at UC Berkeley, felt that the subsidiary principle, which suggests that administrative issues should be handled by the smallest, lowest, or least centralized competent authority. King felt that this single principle was the best kind of organizing principle to explain the governance of systems, statewide systems. And so I'll be looking at how this principle influences the perceptions of administrators who have authority over online programs in the university system of New Hampshire. My research questions are: how are online programs administered by institutions affiliated with a public statewide system? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of administering online programs in a public statewide system? For my research design, I will be using a single case study approach, relying heavily on research by Yin to help structure the different tasks that make up the case study. I will also be using a constant comparison approach to code, sort, and analyze data that will allow me to more quickly iterate the different kind of hypotheses that I arrive at in terms of which categories are emerging in the data. And so there's really a focus on integrating analysis and interpretation when using constant comparison. And it allows me to not have to lock myself into a set of codes or categories that may not fully capture some of the phenomena that are being observed in the data. So I'll be evaluating data using Revai and Downey's online program evaluation model. I mentioned that I'll also be adding an eighth factor, the subsidiary principle. And so the codes and the categories and themes will all be evaluated against that model. And then to help contextualize findings, I mentioned that I'll be using the subsidiary principle to really round out or to help understand some of the phenomena in terms of the unique context of a statewide system. And so USNH administrators will be surveyed and interviewed to answer research questions. My study focuses on the 4 universities that make up the University of New Hampshire system: the University of New Hampshire, where I'm an employee, the Granite State College, Plymouth State University, and Keene State College. My study will provide additional detail about the unique characteristics of each institution. And as you can imagine, each institution is located in a different location, has for the most part, a different function or focus. And several of the institutions have multiple campuses. To answer the research questions, the study will focus on a group of high-level administrators working at the 4 institutions, and will also include surveys and interviews with employees of the system office. To survey my survey participants, I'll be using Qualtrics. My goal is to survey 20 to 25 participants, or administrators. My survey includes 20 questions, and I'm hopeful that my response rate will be high, simply because I know most of the participants, and our system is relatively small, and for the most part, I feel like there's a high level of collegiality among faculty and staff. In-person interviews will be conducted at least a week or two after the survey results are collected, and a first pass is used to identify codes and categories. The interview questions, there are about 15 to 20 interview questions. So I'm adding some room for additional questions for the surveys based on whatever new categories emerge from the survey questions. So I'm in process with the IRB effort, and have already spoken to the IRB office at both Boise State University and the University of New Hampshire, and that all is going well. I also completed the CITI, the online course for the IRB office. After data are gathered, they will be analyzed using a constant comparison approach that will allow me to identify codes and group data where there are repeating instances or similarities among codes or themes, categories. It will also allow me to identify new codes and categories. In order to analyze data using this method, interview transcripts will be read and coded. Supporting documents gathered before, like memos or website information, will also be reviewed for common themes and then coded. Finally, consistencies and discrepancies across coded interviews will be examined, and the most recent themes will be re-examined in light of newly analyzed data. This slide details my timeline. I'm hoping to complete my survey data gathering in March to aggregate those results and to identify at least a first round of categories and codes. My hope is then to conduct interviews after analyzing the survey results at least once. Sometime after that, in March, most likely early April, I would then determine another round of codes and themes collected from not just the survey results, but the interviews as well. After that, or during that period, I will also be transcribing and analyzing interviews. Again, most likely late March or early April. In April, my goal is to conduct follow-up interviews and to continue to analyze data. And then in May, I would like to complete my data analysis and data interpretation and complete the last 2 chapters of my dissertation with a hope for endpoint of early June. And so again, I thank each of you for being on my committee. I know that's an investment for each of you, and I look forward to your input and to working more closely with you. Thank you.